Facebook as well. So our next guest, you might know her. She's a familiar face around Rhode Island. Trudy Cox has been the CEO and Executive Director of the Preservation Society of Newport County since 1998. So I believe Trudy is here with us, and I'd like to welcome her to Go Look Alive. And the Navigant to credit to Union Broadcast Center. Trudy, such a pleasure to meet you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Did you see our owl?
Yes, I did. I'm very impressive.
So beautiful. It kind of got me beating it a little bit. What a wingspan. That's a question I forgot to ask. How big the wingspan is, but I'm a member of the Audubon, so, and I think you did some work for Audubon. Were you on their board before?
I'm on their advisory board, and I'm very proud and honored to be a part of Audubon. So it's a great, great organization.
Great organization.
But I'm not one who volunteers to take the birds around.
You don't have one of those
yet
gloves.
To do that. No, I can't do that.
I think being on the board, we'll get you an honourary glove.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure. So you do a tremendous amount of work with Newport Mansions, and congratulations on the successful year that you've had. 1 million visitors.
That's right.
So we'll get to that in a moment. But first, let's start off with the fact that you have been put in charge of running, 11 historic museums, 7 of them historic landmarks. So some of them, the Breakers, Rosecliff. Just what is it like being in charge of these national icons?
Well, I can tell you that there is never a dull day.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine coming to work and having to tell your friends that I've got to go to the Breakers today? It's going to be a hard day. And I think actually there are 400 people who work at the Preservation Society. And I think that one of the perks of working for the Preservation Society is that there is probably no other place in Rhode Island that is more luxurious a place to work in than the Newport Mansions. And if your viewers haven't yet had a chance, please make the time, and especially in the wintertime, because there's no traffic in Newport.
That's
in
very true.
To go and visit Marble House or the Elms or the Breakers. We have a brand new tour at the Breakers, which opened up a week and a half ago.
And I can't wait to go. I was talking to Andrea. I cannot wait. I'm so excited.
We will roll out the carpet for you, Molly, because it's a tour, not the regular tour through the house, but we take our guests below earth through into the basement, into the boiler room, and into a tunnel that connects the boiler room with the main house by a 360-foot long tunnel. The first Breakers that was built by not by Cornelius Vanderbilt, he lived in it, burned down. And so when he built the second Breakers, he made a decision that he was going to make sure that anything that was fire related was as far away from the house as it could be. And in fact, the house wasn't built in wood as the first Breakers was. It was built in stone. So there could be no possibility of going through the real heartbreak of losing one's home to a fire. And in fact, Cornelius Vanderbilt was in the house. It was the day after Thanksgiving. He was entertaining the famous author Edith Wharton for tea with her husband, and the fire broke out. Everybody, including the servants, had to run out of the house very quickly. The New York Times reported, this is back in 1892, that you could see the smoke from that fire from Block Island.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
And the Vanderbilts moved in with Edith Wharton for the first few weeks as they recuperated from the loss of that house. So he decided, I'm never going to have a fire again.
Oh, he's probably mortified. He's probably embarrassed, right?
Well, we'll never really know what happened. It was an electrical problem. So anyway, that's why the boiler room is 360 feet away from the house. And that's what our guests now get to see. They get to see the boiler room, they get to see the tunnel, they get to see the basement, they get to see and learn how do you provide the electrical power to 70 rooms in a house the size of the Breakers. What about plumbing? Where, in the Breakers you can get salt water baths as well as freshwater baths.
How was that done? How do you do that?
It had one of the first elevators in Newport, and it was installed by a company called Otis Elevator, which is still around today. Otis still maintains the
Really? They still maintain it?
Yes, they do. So all of these really fascinating stories, particularly stories about how a house that big was operated. It's a complicated story, but very interesting.
And just with innovation, moving forward, just thinking, this is probably one of the reasons why you were able to bring 1 million people through the doors. How were you able, what are some other ways you were able to accomplish this huge feat? And it's a first for a museum outside of Boston.
Right, 1 million tours we gave last year. That's the greatest number of tours in our
phenomenal
70-some-year history. And actually, it's one of the largest, I think, of any museum in New England, which is pretty phenomenal as well. So we have a lot of things going on. The Beneath the Breakers tour. We've got a tour at the Elms that I also highly commend. Even if you're not interested in history, these tours are fun for the regular public. We take people onto the 3rd floor and down into the basement of the Elms and out onto the roof of the Elms, where you get a view all the way up to Providence and all the way out to Block Island. And you get to see how the servants lived.
I've done this tour.
This tour?
I've done this tour, people.
Tell me,
I loved it.
What do you think?
I loved it. And I'm married to a history teacher, so he was like, we're doing this tour, this is what we're doing, and it was the best. I love history, so I highly recommend it.
And wouldn't you agree that it is a great tour for Rhode Islanders, because it tells you which nationalities were hired, how did people from Ireland learn that there was a job at the Elms, how much were people paid, how many hours did they work every day, did they ever have any time off, if they had time off, where did they go to entertain and have fun with each other. It's a fascinating tour.
It was. And what interested me the most was how they painted the upper level to hide that there were rooms up on that 3rd floor.
Absolutely, that's true.
And so now I look at houses differently. We're like, ooh, is that a 3rd floor up there?
Right,
anyway.
Exactly. And then and also in that house, you get to go down into the basement. And I think that's an interesting story too, because Mr. Berwind, who was in the coal business, used coal to heat the house. Of course, they weren't using the house that much in the wintertime, because these were summer cottages, as you know.
Cottages, yes.
But the coal, he didn't want the coal to be delivered on the property, so he built a coal shaft outside of the walls of the Elms, which the coal would be then dumped into and put into a train, and the train would then be brought in by train tracks to the boiler room of the Elms.
Fascinating.
I mean, that's a pretty luxurious way to get your coal delivered to your house.
Not too shabby.
I mean, I grew up on a farm where I every day shoveled coal to keep the house warm, so things have changed a lot. But anyway, so we have the Beneath the Breakers tour, the Servant Life tour at the Elms. We have a children's tour at the Breakers, which we have had more parents tell us really changed their children's lives. And I know that sounds like I'm overstating things, but a lot of kids aren't interested in history, and they will argue with their parents out in the parking lot. I've seen these arguments.
You've seen arguments.
They want to stay in the car and play with their iPhone, and the parents are saying, no, you are going to come in and take this tour. And at the end of the tour, they've had a wonderful, wonderful time, because it's really geared to what it was like to be a kid living at the Breakers, and they can relate to that story. And there are lots of games that they can play through the house, and so that has brought more families to us. We have a number of tours that are in foreign languages. Our visitation from people around the world is about 20% is international. So we really have to be able to communicate in languages that are the languages that our visitors are using the most. So there's French, there's Spanish, there's Korean, there's Mandarin, and I think that really has been a way of signaling actually to the world that we are trying to make this an experience that you can enjoy from start to finish. So there are lots of things that we're doing. We have at Rosecliff a tour that we're using an iPad-like piece of technology, so that when you're taking the tour, you can look at the iPad.
It's interactive.
And learn more about what's going on in the house. And that has been a very popular new technology that we're still experimenting with. So we're trying to stay on top of the trends and be as innovative as we can be. And I think our publicity in general has just grown tremendously. I have to admit, I think Downton Abbey helped the Preservation Society.
Not a bad point.
No, I think that people really loved that TV series, and that resulted in people wanting to learn a little bit more. It's kind of the same time period.
Yeah.
So all these things have resulted in, and Newport, by the way, is an international destination. And when you consider that you've got the best jazz in the country, you've got the best folk music in the country, you've got a music festival, a classical music festival, you've got some of the greatest tennis stars coming to Newport every year, you've got yacht races that are covered around the world. It is an international city in the tiny little state of Rhode Island. It's what drives the tourism economy of this state. And I think it becomes a more and more popular place to visit, not just for New Englanders or for people from the Atlantic coast, but from across the country and around the world.
And going off of that, do you think that the Newport Mansions and the Preservation Society are helping push that?
I think absolutely. We had an economic study done several years ago by one of the state's foremost economists, and it resulted in the conclusion that the Preservation Society contributes financially to the city of Newport alone, just to Newport alone, $109 million annually. That's what our visitors are contributing back to the city. Staying in hotels, buying in stores, eating in restaurants. That's a tremendous, tremendous number. So we are a very, very important part of the economic fiber of this state. And it's why we are so active and interested in what the governor and what the legislature does when it comes to tourism decisions, because they have an impact on us, and I think we have an impact on the state.
Yes, I would say, do you consider yourself really an economic engine in the Preservation Society?
I think, well, this is a real dichotomy for us, because I think that the people who work for the Preservation Society, we see ourselves as history buffs, we see ourselves as a museum, we see ourselves as people who are trying to bring to life preservation and how do buildings get better preserved. But at the end of the day, we are worth a lot of money, and we hire a lot of people, 400 people, and we contract with a lot of local businesses. When something has to be repaired, it's done by local companies. When when weddings are being held at one of our houses, it's local caterers. So it's local tent people, it's local musicians. So in so many different ways, we are adding to the economy of the state of Rhode Island and keeping people employed. And so when you look at it from that perspective, we become extremely important, and how strong we are really has an impact on how strong Newport is as a community. And so we have a special obligation. We're preservationists, we're museum advocates, we are art historians, and we are economic drivers. We're all four things.
And it really is such a unique place. It really is, and has such a unique dynamic. I mean, we were talking about it before. Yes, thinking about how much a repair must cost, to fix a leak in a roof.
Yeah.
And to get the right kind of person to come in and to fix that. Just what a unique concept. Yeah, just come on in. We have a leak in the breakers, to get the right kind of person.
We did a major restoration of the breakers, which was the roof. We had to, all of the chimneys, 11 chimneys were leaning.
They were all 11 of them were
all
leaning?
leaning more than they should. The skylights had to be repaired. That was
wow.
a $2.5 to $3 million project. We spend more than $2 million a year on the breakers alone.
Just on the breakers alone?
Keeping that operated and also maintained. So yes, I've just told you we are driving the economy, but it also costs a lot of money to maintain houses of the stature and the size and the importance of the Newport Mansion. So it's a big, big burden. It's a challenge. There is not one moment of the day where there isn't some project that needs to be done. And we've got a lot of projects underway. We're restoring Kingscote right now. We just finished the restoration of the Chinese tea house, which is one of the most precious jewel boxes anywhere, I think, on the East Coast. And I think that I probably sound like I'm bragging a lot, but I think that our maintenance and properties people are truly the best artisans anywhere in the nation. I'll put our people up against any construction firm. In fact, if our people went out and started their own construction company, they'd blow the doors off of the business world. The people who work for us day in and day out, taking care of those houses, are extraordinarily gifted people, and they work very hard. We just restored the Elms Carriage House. It is being used now as a scholars center where we are attracting young people to come and live with us for a year, do research on an aspect of history that we think is important to understand better. How would you like to do that right out of college?
No kidding.
I want that.
I do too. Can I go
really,
back?
That's exactly. Your husband would love that.
He would love. I'm going to tell him
to send people our way when.
Okay.
They've got to have a master's degree, but we've brought in some of the most extraordinary young scholars, and believe me when I tell you, these are going to be the people who are running museums in 20 years. And I hope they'll look back and say, I got all my experience at the Preservation Society.
No kidding.
So the Elms Carriage House was a building that was so run down and hadn't been used in 40 or 50 years. The ceilings were falling in, there were leaks, it was a mess. And our people internally did the entire restoration of that building, that 1914 building, very, very special building. So we've got a great staff, and we, as you know, because you've spent some time down there, I think that our landscapes and gardens are pretty extraordinary, and we have an equally unbelievable group of people who know about horticulture and gardening, and we've got 1,800 trees, and they're all specimen trees, and they're all very special, and so taking care of that arboretum, and it is a certified arboretum, highest level, one of the highest levels of arboretums in the nation, is a huge job, which I commend our staff for doing as good a job as they do.
Great. I want to switch gears here quickly because you have an extensive background working in the environment and for the environment, serving multiple positions. So I do want to ask you quickly, what are your thoughts on the way the new administration is moving toward environmental policies?
Well, I worked for a Republican governor in the state of Massachusetts, and people always like to say Republicans don't care about the environment. Frankly, Senator John Chafee was one of the best environmentalists in the country. I think that I learned from working with Governor Weld and Governor Cellucci back in Massachusetts that if you take care of the environment and you do it well, and you do it thoughtfully, it can have a great benefit on the economy. And those people who want to try to separate it's the economy or in the environment are just wrong. They don't get it. And so I think we have to do, and it's going to be always the challenge of the environmental community, to educate and instruct and teach those naysayers or those who are critics that there's a lot to be gained by keeping your air clean and your water clean. We can't go back. We have to keep moving forward. And so don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is a nation that has made tremendous strides. And it's resulted in some incredible innovation. We've got cleaner cars in America because the environmental community was calling for cleaner cars. And guess what? They're selling to the public and the price is coming down, and all of those things are working out so well. So I think we just have to, right now, and the environmental community has to stick to its guns, be as positive as it can be, give good examples of how environmental protection can pay off for the economy, and keep repeating that so that those who might not believe it come around to the right point of view.
Great, thank you for that. And before we leave, I do want to ask you probably the toughest question that we have. If you could pick one Newport mansion to live in, which would it be?
I change my mind every day.
Okay.
I really do. I think I love the Elms, and I love Hunter House. It's right on the water. I think the Breakers is a big house, so I'm not sure. I'd love to spend some time living in it, but I don't know if I'd like to live in it day in and day out.
Yeah, and have to take care of it.
Chateau-sur-Mer is one of those houses that the detailing, the woodwork, it's just, you can't find anything like it. The stenciling on the ceilings, it's unbelievable. You can never go into any room at Chateau-sur-Mer and not see something new, so I can't answer that.
It's a tough call. Nope. Not decisive enough.
And then I have to tell you, I love Marble House because I love Alva Vanderbilt, who was one of the feistiest Gilded Age Society women. She was the first woman from that period in history to ever get a divorce, a high society divorce, and she went on to become a great advocate for women's rights, and she worked to get the women
the backstory, yeah,
the right to vote, and she held rallies with thousands of women on the lawn of Marble House, and, trying to pump up people to go out and fight for women's right to vote. So I like that house because of Alva.
That just for the backstory
Yeah,
alone.
right.
Oh, well, Trudy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I
So
appreciate
much
your
fun.
time and so much insight. So thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us on Go Local Live. Appreciate it.
Good luck.
And thank you so much. And can't wait to hear more out of the Newport Society, so Preservation Society. So thank you so much for joining us.